Beautiful, Dave. Dave, I'd actually love to answer Nick here, Nick Sargent, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So for everybody else who maybe isn't reading the chat, Nick says, as language has seemed to become more and more complicated over time, do you think there is a limit to how complex a communication system can be? Do you think it could re-simplify? So that's great. So McKenna's idea of watching language evolve actually has an endpoint, and this is visible language. About 80% of our sensory input right now is visual. You can 80-20 rule it. So clearly this is the most efficient way to share information. Right now we do it through an audio. But you could look at something like an octopus. And the octopus is actually a very interesting situation because it communicates via light itself. It has the ability to camouflage or change its skin color to almost the entire spectrum of colors you could possibly fathom. And using this, it can communicate with others exactly how it's feeling. There's less room for interpretation because instead of using words as building blocks, you actually use light itself on a spectrum. It would be like what I mean by the spectrum, it would be like if you could hum, like just and all your different tones, you could you really need to be accurate with it, right? But you could just completely convey all of your meaning to someone else. So this is how the octopus communicates, is via light. They joke, when it spurts out a little bit of ink, it just wants some privacy. It's wearing its heart on its sleeve a bit. I'm actually not sure if they have that kind of control, but that is how they communicate. So it just seems that this would be kind of where language will end up evolving towards, like look at Elon, he's got the Neuralink going on because it's a bandwidth issue of information, of communicating and sharing information. He always jokes that, you can think at X amount of cycles per second, but your thumbs can only enter information, so fast into your phone or even with, your fingers on a laptop. It's not totally efficient, right? So if we kind of throw this forward, and again, this may be, very far forward, right? We're kind of talking about quite grand scales here, but it does seem that would be the most efficient way. Another kind of idea is, could we break it down to something purely mathematical eventually? And I'm not sure, so the thought, McKenna suggests maybe topology could be a fundamental alphabet for visual language. So I think what he means by this is topology being the relationship between different geometric shapes or ratios. Imagine you could communicate just with a beautiful, painting or something, and every color, everything is almost an art, for example. You're communicating with art, and you can package so much meaning into something so simple, like just one piece of paper, for example. Pictures 1,000 words, I guess, naturally comes to mind, right? So this would be a more efficient way to communicate. And we'll see where it takes us, whether we can maybe do that through technology, through maybe VR or something too. Imagine how much you communicate via that method.
Yeah, and Sam just posted in the chat, Elon guessed nonverbal communication in 25 years. And Elon with his Neuralink, I think it's unimaginable, how that's going to affect communication. There right now, you put it to me this yesterday, Dube. We have a bandwidth bottleneck when it comes to expressing information. Whether it's fingers to our keyboards or trying to say it out of our mouths. But when this Neuralink that he's developing, becomes common, and your thoughts immediately get broadcasted to whoever's around you, where is that membrane? Where is that kind of coding that is around the individual and the ego that makes you, you? If you're just if everyone's just constantly sharing their thoughts and ideas, it's almost like they become a hive mind of sorts, but in a lot faster, and communication's a lot faster. It's almost instant, and it honestly sounds like the transcendental object at the end of time, like how fast this communication is happening. So
there you go, Dave.
I'm happy I got to tie that part in. But you know, who knows with the combination of, you know, the development of AI and, you know, artificial general intelligence, like where is this gonna lead? Like where I mean, evolution does not care about what form of complexity it takes. It doesn't care if you're human or not. It just wants to get more complex and advanced over time as it goes forward in the universe. And also, I feel like the transcendental object at the end of time is really just like life and consciousness just like popping its head to another dimension where just time doesn't exist. That's what I feel like the transcendental object at the end of time is. And communication definitely gets there. Communications are overwhelming already. Yeah, I agree. Like it kind of like stops making us human if we don't have that individuality. But and this is especially true in like Western cultures where individuality is such a high ideal. But in I feel like in more collective cultures that you find in the East, they would be more open to such things. And you kind of see, it's funny, like the nickname, in China they have a lot of nicknames for organizations. They use the metaphor of ants, like just ants in a colony working together. Like for example, you have like Ant Pool, one of the Bitcoin's biggest mining pools is based in China. It's just this idea of the collective working together towards a higher goal and sharing the ideas, and the individual meaningless. And honestly, it's like worked out pretty well for China. Like they're definitely a new superpower right now, a force to be reckoned with. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sorry about the Dave. Yeah. Dude, the first thing I thought of was when you said Twitter. I'm sorry, when you said the sharing of the thoughts instantaneously via, you know, Neuralink. I gave away my punchline, but I thought about Twitter. You know, it's basically everybody's just spewing out their little thoughts rapidly.
Yeah.
And so it would just be like an advanced, yeah, it would just be like a collective Twitter that's talking to itself at all times. And you're right, a lot of this would be run by AI, like even now, because AI is just the analysis of big data and using those trends to kind of make influential decisions. And you know, what you see on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media, the ads that are targeted to you are a response to all this, are a product of all this. So it seems, you know, that where our decisions are getting more and more influenced by this, you know, overmind thing here. And I do have a little bit of fear that with Elon's chips in our head, we're going to end up being the limbic systems of AI. But you know, it's better to try, as he says, you know, you have to try to go with it as opposed to, you know, we need to try and merge with machines if we do want to keep any of that humanness. I think if we try and confront this thing head on, we're going to end up losing. So, yeah, those were the thoughts that kind of came to my mind. But it's just really crazy how fast this is all happening too. You know, it's like,
yeah, it's exponential.
Yeah, human time is just becoming so inefficient that, you know, even if it's, you know, 100 years or so, just things will be evolving so quickly. Humans wouldn't even want to live in that world, I feel, you know. And it's really difficult to imagine once we have a quantum computer, how fast this thing is really going to move. Like this thing will be able to think roughly 1 million times faster. This is Elon's number, 1 million times faster than the circuits in your brain, than the biocircuits. So it really becomes a race. And the first civilization to get one of these computers, if you have it plugged in for even just like a month, never mind 6 months or a year or 2 years, longer than, if the NSA gets one of these things 6 months before China, they have 6 months of computing somebody thinking at, literally millions of times faster. It compounds so quickly. You're going to be able to, again, with a quantum computer, literally taking all the information we have on the internet, go through, simulate every possible future, go down every path, see where they all lead. And it's going to be a very scary tool. So we'll see how much information we share. We'll see if China shares any of their information, or if they have their own little hive mind going on.
Yeah, like you said earlier, like these tools can either be used for good or used for evil.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to give Sam a shout out here. He says everyone should check out The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth.
Is it priced in Bitcoin? I'm just kidding.
Yo, can I add one thing?
Yeah,
go ahead, Sam. Thank you.
So just talking about the rapid expansion of technology, this guy, Jeff Booth, in his book writes about, he asked the question at all his talks and everything, if you fold a piece of paper 50 times, how far would it reach? Assuming you could fold it 50 times, it only folds 7, before you can't fold it again. But if you were to fold it 50 times, any guesses? This is really good.
The length of the universe.
Well, to the sun.
To the sun.
So,
okay.
So yeah, something so then, and it just gives like a really good kind of like way for your brain to think about how fucking fast things are moving right now, and faster than we can imagine. And that book's kind of about that. It's a really nice read, and it's quick too.
Nice. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, anybody else, feel free to add, take the floor, share your thoughts, write in the chat box. We really want this to be an open discussion with the time we have. If not, we'll just keep on talking.
I think it's worth saying one other thing too. In defense of Terrence here, he gets a little bit of flack because he made a couple predictions about 2012 being a very strange year for humanity. And, this guy was articulating a lot of these thoughts, through the 70s and 80s. And he's just so timeless that even what he's saying now is true. And that's what makes him so great. But, when you're making predictions during the 80s, he was thinking 30, 40 years ahead of time. People were thinking by 2000, we would have like a Star Wars looking thing with people having flying cars all, on some system. So, we're a little bit, it's tough to really envision just how fast we will exponentially go.
That's the thing about Terrence. His talks are really timeless. His brother was giving an interview recently, and I think me and you talked about this too. Like, his interviews from the 80s and 90s, like they apply today. They sound like they could be said yesterday. It's the most mind-blowing thing. Like, his ideas are just so so classic. They're just like classics and so timeless that I really recommend like listening to his lectures. Preparing for this, like I've been listening to him for 6 years, but like even listening to them again and trying to like get my thoughts together about it, I'm listening to the same lectures over and over again and still find new things. And I think like being able to find new things in things that you read over and over again is like just proof of how timeless his talks really are.
The talks themselves are fractals.
Yeah, and I feel like he just had like such a way with language, such a way with words that like he could kind of just like bend reality to its will just by using words. I don't know how to describe it. Like he can it's hard to explain unless you listen to him.
Yeah, really. He'll just take your hand and kind of walk you down this road, and you're like, okay, yep, and then you realize where you are, and you're like, how did he get me here? How did I believe this?
And Hi from Seattle just asked, where do you find his talks? YouTube. YouTube has just a plethora of videos. Some of my favorite channels are Fractal Universe, We Are Happy Plants, they just have a collection of Terence McKenna pages. You can just search for them. And even though Terence passed away in 2000, he's kind of taken on this new life online. And he's still alive today in the sense that his ideas are still being shared and people are still listening to him.
There's actually his a lot of his life work unfortunately was lost too. He was living in Hawaii, and his house had caught fire shortly after he passed. So a lot of his manually written work over the years, unfortunately he's not with us, but we have plenty of his lectures online. He would, kind of as a profession, actually go around and lecture about random topics, just such as this.
His writings, burning, or it's like the Library of Alexandria burning down. Like, I can't imagine, because he was a botanist by trade, so I can't imagine like all the different like unique plants he was growing in Hawaii, and like all his like records of like what they look like and like what effect they had on the human mind. It's kind of a shame that they're lost, but I think nature has, in the universe has, although it has a tendency for creation, on the other side of the coin, it has a tendency for destruction. And to think like how much knowledge has been lost throughout time. Like, I know we talk about a lot, like how like language is created. Knowledge is created through like combining memes together to create complex ideas. But like, we kind of, there's this one contemporary guy I like listening to, this scholar, his name's Samo Berger, and he talks about kind of like this like dark matter of knowledge that exists, that's kind of hanging over of humanity, of lost knowledge. For example, concrete, which we luckily rediscovered. Concrete was, really common in Rome, and it's actually, concrete in Rome was more efficient than concrete today. It still lasts to this day. We see it in the aqueducts that are found in Italy and across Europe. We lost that knowledge, and we were lucky to gain it back. But that's just one thing. Just to think about all the things that we've lost throughout history. Like, and there's a lot of things we can't explain. People are still theorizing, like, how did we build the pyramids like so long ago? What technology we had? And that's kind of like the dark matter, that the intellectual dark matter that exists, that is just hanging over us.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Great. How do you know what you don't know?
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Epistemology. Yeah.
And things are, becoming more and more valuable. Like, different things are becoming more and more valuable. Like the skill, like maybe Python skills today are quite valuable, but back then, I don't think that would get you lunch. So
back then, even though it existed, like even back then, there's like, knowledge that they had that we didn't know. Like, now we have knowledge that we have and they didn't know. Like, the thing about like knowledge is it's something to be discovered. It's like a never-ending, incomplete project, and the way we articulate this knowledge that we discover is through language.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Uncle Bob.
Yeah. Wow, you're really... Do you think crypto and... I noticed there's a kind of a sort of a connect with people who are into cryptocurrency, people who are into alternative ways of doing things, psychotropics, and certain even political viewpoints. They all seem to cross mesh in this world. Is this right? Like, we're all kind of anarchists. I don't know. Like,
yeah, no. I think the most interesting thing about crypto, it's just naturally such a nexus of different fields of knowledge that came together to form cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is really the combination of game theory, programming, economic theory, and something else. Jameson Loop has a great definition. There's one more thing I'm forgetting. It's a combination of all these different fields that come together to create, and social consensus or something, like to create like cryptocurrency, and like really like it has a kind of like a new way of thinking about the world. I actually think, Dube, remember when we went to UMass and there was that major program called BDIC, which where you could like build your own major. It's basically like that. Like BDIC was this program at UMass where you could build your own major and you could combine 3 different fields to create like basically your own new realm of knowledge. And like I almost did that. I decided not to, but it was people have like really interesting majors, ranging from cheese. I remember hearing that when I was in school, and to now I'm sure somebody must have gotten a degree in cryptocurrency in BDIC at UMass. Like I am 100. Like though I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure that exists.
Yeah, I think we all share similar values at the end of the day. I think that's what makes all relationships great is those common values of maybe autonomy, of the trying to conserve the right of the individual, maybe a little bit libertarian in a sense.
Yeah.
Freedom. You can't stop telling me what to do, man. Stop telling me what to do.
Yeah. That's being I think
I'm free. I'm not a number. I'm a free man.
The most powerful thing about Bitcoin is that it truly allows you to be a sovereign individual, if used properly. Like, if you own your keys, you could literally have $1 million in your back pocket, and you can, if you have, the mnemonic, combination, you can literally cross borders with this memorized and be able to just transfer money anywhere, whether physically you going from country to country or, just like sending someone BTC. Like it's crazy seeing these like $1 billion, movements of Bitcoin for like a fee of like $10. Like it's honestly mind blowing. Like, and I'm, it's like right in front of us, this world that's coming to be through first the internet and that now through, the emergence of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and blockchain and whatnot. Just like I said in my talk, this distributed world, this more decentralized world, I think that's going to put more sovereignty in the hands of individuals, if individuals so choose. Otherwise, they're going to just be like at the mercy of others.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just had a also topic, literally communicating from 2030 and beyond, and how we are shaping communications. So like you're a very complimentary topic for me. Very beautiful to see this connection. I'm talking in my talk that the fact that we don't have enough female voices, or the feminine doesn't have to be a female, the body, but the fact that this like non-linear and non-type A approach to things, and especially technology for the communications. Where do you think how we can I guess include a little bit of our creative aspects of ourselves, and how this can be applied in technology and in our communications with each other and business communications as well?
I feel
Dave,
like,
do you mind if I jump in here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you for speaking with us, first of all. So I think that the artist kind of has been pushed aside in the past couple hundred years because productivity just had such a boom that maybe how artists haven't really changed their methods in every way. Now we're using technology, maybe DJs and stuff, but people are still painting on a piece of paper. And so we kind of just flailed in as far as that part goes. I think that the next stage, these next 100 years, now that we kind of have the technology and the engineering to be able to end world hunger and really create a very beneficial life for everyone. It's just we're kind of still figuring out the societal ways to do this, how to convince enough people to put enough money in certain places to be able to make these things happen. And I think that, and this is actually Terrence's next part here, but he's always says, if the artists can't save us, no one can. And I think that the artists will need to communicate this vision of, helping us feel the consequences of our actions, helping us get more instant feedback for what is happening. And when everyone you know, this is how you can change minds. And, you know, as we kind of alluded to with language, you need to change the mind to be able to inspire, to be able to make things happen in this world.
Let me add on to that. Terrence actually said, when you look at Amazonian shamanic cultures and societies, each kind of group, they had their society, however it was functioned, and the shaman was basically sanctioned by the society to kind of be weird and do its own thing, and kind of explore the unknown, and through the use of substances that they found in the jungle, and really push the cultural boundaries when needed. In modern society, it's really artists that take the role that shamans did in Amazonian societies. They, through their art, through their pictures, through their music, through their creations, they push the envelope of what could be thought, and really, kind of let ideas that aren't accepted in the mainstream discourse kind of, start emerge from the fringes, and kind of, and if enough people, kind of relate to that idea, it can really take shape. And that's how really change in society happens, is it happens from the periphery. Like, change really never happens like where people are comfortable. Change doesn't happen where people are complacent. Change happens when people are stressed and trying to find ways to push limits, and artists definitely do that.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Great question.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? My name is
What's
Oflo. Yo,
good,
I
Oflo?
was in the other group, and I was having a talk in the other group, and my talk was called World Star Bitcoin, marketing Bitcoin to the masses. And I was like, oh, nobody's in here. So I was like, yo, let me come in here. And you guys were talking about Bitcoin. And
Unit on conference. There is a reason why it's called Unit. We are definitely very unified in here. It's beautiful to see this connection happening. I think we're experiencing that. I actually wanted, the feminine voice give me this, an artist. This is something that I wanted to share with you guys.
Wow.
Like, right now we're here. We're literally here in this 2020 where there's not that many of us. But then by 2023, there's going to be more in this plane. Wait, am I showing right? Yes.
Yeah.
More in this plane of existence, this new dimension, the fifth dimension of reality, where we see each other as gods, basically, and creators. And
That's
then
exactly
further,
where I go in my last
further. Yep. And then
Yeah.
by 2030, we're going to be like vibing, literally vibing, chilling, having a wonderful time.
We're just going to be vibing. Hell yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have the biggest parties of the unification, the coming together, the
Thank
deep unconditional love and connection. It's really happy.
It's going to feel great, especially after being quarantined like this.
I really like that looping mechanism. It's this like really beautiful, every conversation we're having with every person, it's a reinforcement. It's the values that we share with somebody else. Like, what are we leaving behind in every conversation? That's what's going to be expanding us into that larger.
Exactly.
It's spells. We are creating spells by our words. And that's why it's so powerful to be super, super intentional with our words, and to maybe speak less.
Yeah, actually, a part that I deleted from my speech, like, literally goes into the metaphysical, like, nature of words and how words literally create reality. In
now
Genesis,
it's back there.
Now it's back. In Genesis 1:3, like, God said, "Let there be light," and Augustine of Hippo, the early Christian theologian, commented that God spoke the word, and that's how light was created. And then you had this one magic stop, saying like the magicians of religious antiquity like used language as like a form of creation. So exactly what you're saying.
I think sometimes
we're co-creating. Go ahead.
I think sometimes we get really caught up in this, like, the magician versus the sorcerer, where it's like this innate ability is the sorcerer, the magician or the wizard has all the spell books. I think we get really caught up in the mental masturbation of like talking about how we're going to talk to people and how we are going to connect instead of actually just connecting.
Right.
Which I think is potentially risky, but
people get too meta about it.
So finding that balance is key.
it's the balance, and it's also the ability to go in a vulnerable places where we would never go, especially with people we've never met before. You know, it's like, how edgy is that? How we can go there together, how we can truly see each other as a safe space to be with each other, and not like, oh my God, no, but I have to hide something, you know, so that, you know, like I have some hidden something to stab them into whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like the ego is really holding us back from the boundary dissolution
Fear.
that's necessary here.
Yeah, it's fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have amazing human minds, and we have amazing capacities to tame down the egos and be able to collaborate together in a coherent way with the use of technology and this spaces, these beautiful connections that we all share, and record it and have it as history pieces for the future.
Yeah, we're all coming together here. And thank God we have the technology to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that this all sort of brings up, it's really important to be able to connect with each other, but then there's also this connection with ourselves and that intuition of what it is that we as individuals want to be creating. So like, even though we are reinforcing each other's values, and like, I love all the stuff that's going on here, also creating the personal reflection of like, what am I journaling about? What are you journaling about? So we can reinforce within our own selves, instead of being dependent on the conversation of like waiting for you to share something with me. Can I find it within myself and be reminded by my own environment? And that's another opportunity and a challenge that I think the technology right now is really hitting us hard with. It's scrolling through the feed, being reminded of values that I don't necessarily care about. So I'm curious if you guys have, like, how are you reminding yourself of your values and discovering them on your own?
For me, it's artwork. Like, I just want to say that this
beautiful.
is artwork. It's artwork. It's almost like completely turning off my head, so we can create something that is non-linear, yet use words to communicate as well. And journaling becomes this half art, half words. This says superhumans of 2020 from the lens of the future. Because we are superhumans, we are truly superhumans. We get it, right? We get it. And to me, this becomes this almost like self-discovery, becomes this vulnerable place where we can self-discover together and be like, okay, that makes sense. This is my truth, and I'm the vocal person in the group of amazing strong men, and that's how things are. And then you are also reflecting certain aspects of me as well, whether it's an artistic or that feminine aspect that is a little bit more precise. So I think we're all discovering that it's like becoming the mosaic in a way that we're all coming together in these different forms and shapes and testing each other and ourselves.
Absolutely. I feel like now, more than ever, it's kind of important to have like filters and kind of, I wouldn't say blinders, but like selected blinders and filters when dealing with like all the information that's coming at us. How evolution works is, as humans, we have 5 senses, but, we don't sense all of visible light. We don't sense all of sound. And there's a reason for that, because it wasn't necessary for our survival. I think kind of one problem we face as human beings today is like, we don't have proper mechanisms to filter information. And that's what a lot of social media companies are struggling to deal with. People, you have all this information coming at us and just stresses people out. And I think, in order for people more, to kind of get in that more comfortable state of ideas, or to be comfortable like in society, like we need to kind of refine those filters more.
Yeah, so that plugs into like, what are those filters that we can create with ourselves, which is what the theoretical next talk in this room is, building your first exobrain, which is this idea of like, all of the world that we have around us is actually our exobrain. Like, the people that we spend our time with, they're the tribal knowledge, but then we can actually build it using technology in our own, like, how do we keep track of all of our stuff? Even just like walking into our house, like using spatial memory. What do you see when you first walk in? What are those moods? You can create whatever sort of reinforcement mechanism you want.
Exactly. Oh yeah, you're supposed to speak.
No,
Yeah,
this is a space.
Yeah, this is a space. Yeah.
Go on, John.
And
It's your turn.
Yeah. Do your thing.
Well, I'm more than happy to keep the conversation going. Like, I think we all have important pieces to share about it. Like,
yeah, true.
The exobrain, like, even when you were talking about language, it's like, okay, so that is the way we communicate with each other and with ourselves. That is incredibly important in determining how we exist in the world. So it's cool that, like, I feel like so much of this stuff does really overlap so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
It seems all of our ideas are just becoming more interconnected. There's just so much momentum, more intensity. These are patterns going on here. And again, the interconnectivity is really one of the highlights that I think we're going through now, and it's so foreign to us. I think maybe in the East they have kind of a different concept of the ego, and maybe they're much more willing to just. I can almost imagine like the next generation even just being like, oh yeah, like why wouldn't you share all of your data? Like it's for the greater good of everyone studying, everything from every little biological, possible thing you could measure to, obviously where you are and the basic stuff that we already kind of have control over.
Each generation is pushing culture and values to a certain direction.
When you say we should all share our data, I feel like there are two distinct kinds of data. There's location data. There's very easy to access information that I would be totally fine with sharing because it's reflective of reality. But then there's the data that's sort of one level below that of, am I really willing to share my journal entries? Like my deeper thoughts with everyone publicly. Like there's what should be public, what should be private.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying about Elon Musk's Neuralink before, like kind of like that membrane between our individuality and ego and the outside world will disappear, and like will we actually be individuals, or will we just be like a giant hive mind?
Well, I don't know if it can really disappear, even if we're like truth lives in the body is something that I feel pretty strongly about. Like the only thing that I can really be confident about is the feelings I have, because even what I see could potentially not be correct, but I can say that anger is real, sadness is real, frustration is real, and I'm not sure if that raw sensation can connect as clearly. It's not words, it's hard to describe.
Yeah, we don't really have the language to be able to articulate a lot of these complex emotions. They used to have 6 different words for love and different kinds of love, maybe like a mother loving a child, or then a romantic love, etc., a love for sport. And now that we have kind of packaged everything just under love, we package everything from aspirin to marijuana under drugs, and it's really a shame when you don't have the tools to be able to kind of make your argument, so do we go to different languages? Is there an evolutionary step in this? As part of our kind of open discussion, I maybe alluded to this previously, but our talk was about McKenna. He kind of theorizes we'll even start visibly communicating and communicating via visual language with less room for malinterpretation or just at least consistency, that it's quite objective and there's less of this human interpretation involved. I forget the name of it, but they have like this competition in Japan where all the best novelists submit their work, and they submit AI generated work and just human generated work, and the best is actually the combination of both the AI and the human work combined. So we'll see where we wind up on this spectrum, I guess.
So,
and the AI is ancient intelligence, you guys. Let's rebrand that, because ancient intelligence, that what really, really creates a new whole paradigm of what is possible. Tapping into the, literally the knowledge of the Maori Atlantis. And I know it's an edgy topic that And I think it's the best time for us to start speaking about that and channeling that truth and discovering that knowledge and diving really deep into those forgotten memories that we all carry on our in our psyche. So it's an interesting a deep perspective of remembering the language of the past in a way, like as if we're doing it from the future.
How would you respond? Like, I know certain people have expressed that the AI is demonic. Like, what would be your response to that?
You mean ancient? Oh, you mean the AI is an actual artificial intelligence? It's gosh, it's where we take it. If I'm demonic inside of me, and this is what the energy that I'm channeling, the technology that I'm creating is going to be that, because behind every algorithm is obviously a human being. So if we are able to, the company that I'm with right now is called newlife.ai, and what we're creating.
Oh, you know Victor.
Well.
I know Victor. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay.
Hi. Well, yeah, it's a one. But it's becoming this development of idea how we can give everyone an ability to build what the AI is by having people vote on the content, but not like vote on like dislike, but vote in terms of like depth. This is a deep like when I hold it for a long time, or I remove my finger soon so I dislike it, or I hold it for 75% of the time and it becomes a 75% like vote, and then it becomes this collective intelligence. Yeah, the collective intelligence of what are we actually like and what we're like okay with and what we're like, no, I don't want to see that. And we're voting for the new reality that way. We're voting with not only yes or no, like Tinder, which is never working like that anyway, but we're working like, yeah, I'd like to explore that. I actually like to go deeper with that person or with that idea to see what can come up from there. So that way we're voting for each other content and helping each other refine our own expression into these digital galleries that we are creating, and having a visualization of what's possible. And by visualization, it can be also like literally videos and snippets of these videos as well that I would be posting on New Life to showcase that these spaces even exist, because the biggest problem right now is fractalization of our community, where we don't even know what's happening anymore because there's so many things happening. We're all these like closed Zoom calls, all these closed circles, am I allowed to even like enter those?
All these closed Discords, all these Telegram groups,
Slack channels. Yes.
It's social media used to be like, or like the early internet was so open where you could just like hop on the forum, everybody's. But now, like, because it's kind of become so restricted and censored, people are retreating to these kind of like private circles and group chats. It's really the group chats that like run the world today. And like,
well, what are the group chats of group chats, right?
It's not ours.
Exactly. Yeah. But I guess this is the key here, is to have leaders now unite. Like the conference is the same way. I have this perspective of life, you have perspective of life, and now we can leaders of these chats, or leaders, co-creators of these chats, we can come together and again build together the visions that we all carry.
The biggest thing with AI is specifically who's programming the AI, who's specifically putting that kind of consciousness out there, because the whole thing is, if you have an AI and it's programmed with the same concepts of racism and inequality, it's just going to perpetuate what's already there. If you have an AI that's specifically looking to transform the planet and make it a better place, then they'll specifically be looking at and working at those ideas. So I think that's one of the most important things when it comes down to the AI. Who's programming the AI, and also the social responsibility of everyone towards programming that AI.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns, where it's the central AI, where everyone theoretically has equal access to programming and training it. Right now, there isn't the accessibility that we would need for everyone to have equal training rights, which sort of transitions from, should we be creating a global AI in the sense of like the way that Google is doing it, training off of predominantly biased information, or should we all be working on building out potentially what our own social recipes are? So it's not going to be quite as smart, but working on something that we as individuals can be using.
I think there's always going to be derivatives. I went to Barbados last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Barbados Island, there's 280 different churches, denominations of Christianity. People have different ideas. They're going to move to the next town and try things out and say, all right, whoever the tribal leader is, forget him. Right, I'm going there. I'm going to build my own city. Got to let people be free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it seems like the evolution of ideas is really taking over. Sorry, buddy. That is really taking over here. You know, before we were maybe evolving through matter and again with DNA, and now that we aren't doing that on a scale that's quickly enough, it seems like we're evolving through our ideas and our culture, really, which is some of our collective ideas. And these ideas are all being thrown out there, and you know that's why maybe we can celebrate those that are more edgy or counterculture or whatever, because they're putting the feelers out there, and whatever survives, if they end up getting a following, that obviously continues forward, and again in an evolutionary sense, spreading the idea, spreading the genes of that population of ideas. So I think it's actually really evolving, helping us evolve and move forward, and who knows what the limits are.
Uncle Bob, you're into crypto, right?
Yeah. How'd you know?
You're supposed to have a talk later on, so I'm looking forward to that one. My question is, and it definitely is for everyone, but what do you guys think about the centralization of Bitcoin's wealth?
I think it's natural, just systems for things to become centralized. I think you can argue that like the first people to mine Bitcoin had like such a head start, like that like small group of people just mining on their just regular laptops. Like it was essentially like a pre-mine in a way. I think like you can't, and essentially like I feel like across time and society, and people can correct me, like wealth and just power tends to centralize, and just societies and cultures and civilizations have this kind of like breathing in and out of centralization and decentralization, centralization, decentralization. And I think the interesting thing about Bitcoin, and one of the things we'll have to deal with it in the future, it's really the people on the fringes that were being pushed towards Bitcoin. The first people to use Bitcoin, other than computer programmers, were people on the Silk Road. They were criminals. And I like to use the example of like, there's definitely some dude that used the Silk Road that has hundreds, if not thousands, of Bitcoin that might have gotten arrested, gotten a 10, 15-year jail sentence, still has his private key and seed key, hasn't touched it, and he's in jail, like being forced to hold it. And when he gets out, he's going to be rich beyond his wildest dreams before he came in. So,
definitely Ross Ulbricht then.
Yeah, like Russell. Oh God, I met his mother actually at a conference.
Really?
Yeah, I met her, and like you can just like kind of like see it in her eyes, like how much she's like trying to work to free her son, and like just seeing his Twitter is like that man. Like I hope that man gets free.
Have you seen his price prediction?
I think
using Elliott wave analysis.
What is his analysis?
Well, his analysis is we're in wave 2. Wave 1 was from 6 cents up to 20,000. Wave 2, we're still in wave 2. He said it's going to actually go back down to 1,200. And wave 3 is, it's something crazy like 330 million. I don't know, or 330,000. Something galactic.
Oh, I think I did hear that big, like he'd say like it was going to go down before it went back up, and like we definitely saw that happening close when the whole Corona hit and Bitcoin went under 4K, and now it's like touching 10K. But like who knows where it's going to go? Like on a long enough time scale, like if you look at it in the past 10 years, it's the best performing asset by far of the decade.
It's unreal, like 1,000,000%. Like from a cent to 10,000 where it is now. I mean, it's unfathomable.
I've never seen something so mind-bogglingly obvious in my life.
And also the way it was born in 2008 after the financial crash, and now it's it's starting to grow, and it's unstoppable. It is unstoppable. Even that big hedge. That's what I'm going to talk about, like how the big hedge funds are. They understand. They can see it now. It's confirmed.
Yeah, a lot of those hedge fund guys are personally invested in it. It's now that, you know, there's the infrastructure for them to institutionally become invested into it, which is huge. Because once you have institutional money, that's when trillions of dollars move.
I wish I'd seen your talk.
Don't
I
worry.
really do. You're really, honestly, I feel like I'm getting an upgrade from all of you.
Oh, no, thank you. No, like, I think we all, like, you know, add on to each other, you know, in all.
Yeah, that's
like,
the beauty of this spaces. We're definitely seeing different like perspectives on things, and that's why it's so good at edgy and post it on YouTube, you know, and have it for life. This is great.
It's funny, like my first talk was just a speech, and it was, you know, I had my speech and then it was over. I was so exhausted after it, like I literally just like passed out. And this one, I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to include my friend Jonathan along to like have this discussion and get other people's ideas. And this has honestly gone like beyond my wildest expectations, you know. And I love how everyone's just comfortable speaking, sharing these ideas.
Thank you.
Did your talk include magic mushrooms?
I actually, well, my first talk did in a small way. I had this really nice line, this really nice passage about the transcendental object at the end of time that Terence McKenna talks about, and kind of these things called transcendental checkpoints, which are checkpoints to the transcendental object at the end of time. And the metaphor I used was the game Super Mario, where he would, like, you know, have to go through these different levels, facing obstacles and eating magic mushrooms that gave him special abilities to get to the end of the level. So I kind of like alluded it to in that talk, and I mentioned like kind of the scientific advancements being made, such as you know, Johns Hopkins opening a psychedelic center, and you know, all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, Dave. I felt this format was excellent. You
Yeah.
did a great job. You know, you can kind of, because you know a lot of these. I'm not sure how familiar everyone else is here with Terence and his work, but there are really complex ideas sometimes that are difficult to digest if
They're so raw.
you don't see them coming. Yeah. So sometimes it's a lot easier to kind of organize his thoughts in our own language. And Dave, you present that exceptionally well and articulate it, you know, from beginning to end very clearly. People can kind of still hold on for the ride, and they don't need a life vest. But here with open discussion, again, great to share ideas. These are how, again, we can find the best ones. And those who persevere through, you know, these, where there's a will, there's a way. So now Zoom has clearly become the new medium for intellectuals to converse, but hopefully this leaves a stain, and people will feel more comfortable, you know, just joining random people who are similar in nothing more than ideas rather than time and space. Maybe time, but
yeah, the silver lining in this quarantine is like this wouldn't have existed, and we wouldn't be sharing these ideas if the quarantine hasn't happened. Like, yes, it sucks, but like, you know, I think we're all making the most of it and trying to like persevere and kind of push through, like by presenting these ideas and trying to refine them and trying to, work off each other to, you know, make, like I said in the beginning of my talk, to like ultimately make a better world for all of us.
How do you propose doing that? What was your thought behind?
I think people should just, you know, listen more and, you know, feel more empowered to share their ideas. You know, it's so hard. There isn't a magic bullet. There isn't like one thing that you can do like that solves all the world problems. It really has to like come to really people coming together around a common set of values and being so unrelenting in their belief. To actually instigate change. It really doesn't take a lot of people to make change happen. Like, you know, the American Revolution was started by like a few percentage of the population.
Mm.
It takes just like a small group of like, you know, unrelenting, unnegotiable like individuals to make change. Like another example that's like a lot like kind of like different than that, like a little like less serious about like how small individuals can affect the masses is you know, how like basically all juices are kosher. I mean, all juices are kosher. Yeah, all juices are kosher. And the reason for that is, you know, there's just like a small group of people, you know, people in Judaism that adhere to, you know, the kosher guidelines of the Bible. That caused, you know, it's a very small percentage of people, but like basically all the juice in America is kosher. So don't underestimate the power of a small group of people.
Yeah, I mean, so bringing it back to the language side of things, I would love to hear if anyone has any specific things that they found to be really effective in being a pain in the ass to like improve the way people speak. So like E-prime language, really cool when people speak with I statements instead of saying people do this, we do things. That's I feel this way, I say, speaking in I statements. I'm curious if you found other things that are worth reminding other people about on a regular basis.
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in, I think that there are really certain phrases that speak to people so deeply, and I could name a few. So actually, a great one I use a lot is "What makes you say that?" And it's a very neutral term, but if you want someone to elaborate on something, you agree or whether you agree or don't agree, you aren't showing your hand, but you can kind of invite them to elaborate more. There's a whole list of them. There's actually a really great book. It's like a 100-minute audiobook, but it's called Exactly What to Say. And they kind of go through this.
Great.
It's awesome. But at the end of the day, I think that the overall like goal is when you're trying to convince someone of something or really portray your idea, the best thing is to kind of lead them down the path themselves so they ultimately come to the same conclusion you did, and just, you know, assuming you don't have any nefarious intent and everything is, you know, justifiable either with logic or new information or something. You know, if you just show them your hand and you're transparent and real, I think people are attracted to genuity. You know, you can you know, get somebody to concur with you, but I mean, I don't want to sound manipulative, but you basically want to make them think that it's their idea, and then they'll just take it and run with it, and they'll be inspired. And yeah, you started the flame, I guess, but you know,
it's like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, ain't it?
You know where he says, he makes the stormtrooper say, "Move along, move along, move along, move along, move along, move along."
Yeah, that sort of reminds me of there are two types of followers. There's no such thing as a leader. There are people who follow people and people who follow ideas. And if you can show them which idea they're following, then they become the traditional leader.
Yeah, that's expression, I heard it a different way. A good leader knows when to follow or how to follow. So it ties into that.
Good leader knows when to listen. You know, it can kind of feel the temperature of its adherents, and you know, adjust and make decisions. There are some times where, you know, the leader has to listen to the adherents, but there are other times when the majority of the adherents are wrong, and the leader has to have the conviction to go against the crowd for the greater good, because he kind of sees a longer time horizon than the group.
So my question is, what is heaven on earth for you guys?
Well, this is a deep question.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
Having meaningful relationships and meaningful experiences with people.
Yeah, I think it's like being integrity within myself, being integrity within relationships. So it's like maintaining all of these different levels of integrity and expressing the fullness of my being and the fullness of all other beings.
Oh, John, that was great. actually completely agree. And I think it's when you can express yourself, just to add on to what you're saying, completely, hopefully, naturally, without thinking, almost in an intuitive state. And the Dalai Lama actually said, happiness is when your thoughts, intentions, and actions are ethically aligned. And, you know, so you aren't filtering anything, you know, it's just kind of this free flow state. Yeah.
And if we can scale that up, so it's like, I just put it in the chat, my name is the fullness of being for all things. What is all things? It's like, it's me, but it's also your fullest expression. It's also the fullest expression of animals and anything that has the ability to express itself, and the appreciation and gratitude of those beings. Yeah. A lot of presence, I think, is required for that, which is tough.
Absolutely.
What about yourself?
Well, for myself, it is basically the children being good on this planet. Like when it comes to like education, freedom to travel, safety, I feel like one of the biggest issues we have on this planet right now, and it impacts me. You can see documentaries of kids in Cambodia literally going through trash for like trying to make $1 a day. And specifically when I see things like that, the eradication of that, basically a playing field, an equal playing field for all the children on this planet, for me, that's heaven on earth. Because I know that if you give everyone just that level playing field, we all can grow from there. And whatever you do from there is on you. But that level base playing field, just and specifically for the kids. And I have little brothers and sisters, so I always think about that. Like, how do I give them a base level in this world? And I think if we could specifically create a platform for all the children of the world to at least they can get somewhere. They have those basic necessities. I think that's heaven on earth.
Yeah, absolutely. That equal opportunity maybe is easily obtainable through an equality of an education that, you know, everybody has a right to. I've always thought, you know, if you can have these Darwinian kind of circumstances and rules in place if you level the playing field from the get-go, you know, and ensure everybody does have a fair opportunity. So yeah, I completely agree, man. It's still interesting too, like, you know, I hear your passion, and, you know, it just occurred to me kind of what our talk was about was how language helps to conserve complexity throughout the universe, and this is helping us evolve at a quicker and quicker rate. And this desire to conserve, like, you know, when we're looking at DNA was one of the first kind of examples we used, and this is information storage, and what do you pass on? It's really just the information of the DNA that gets passed on, and that's what the kind of holy grail is, you know, like even with all kinds of information storage, like information technology today, it's really the data that's important, right? You don't care about the physical hardware. It's just all about the data. It's all about the information. And when, you know, just nature has this such innate natural desire to want to, again, conserve the information, and we feel it in the sense of love for the next generation. But ultimately it doesn't matter the kind of physical human vehicle here. It's just, again, our and maybe we're not passing new information on through genes anymore as much, but through culture, right? And but it's fascinating to me how it seems so naturally to be either pushing us in one direction or even pulling us in this direction. And another one of McKenna's ideas is kind of how, you know, entropy and like an author of thermodynamics just really suggests that it's directionless. It's just, you know, it's a consistent mesh. There's nothing pulling us towards complexity, but there seemingly is, and a desire for it. So
You said something earlier about Darwin, so I want to know what's your perspective and your opinion on Darwin, because that's an interesting individual.
I guess Darwinism overall, I feel, from a very high level, it's absolutely applicable. There are certain things that, you could argue about everything, right? Like, I find it really hard to imagine how he could calculate for the transition from a caterpillar, through a cocoon to a butterfly, using his explanations. But aside from that, I think he's pretty credible, especially with the ways of thinking he kind of introduced.
Yeah, there's this idea added on to Darwinism of like how evolution happens, and this, I forget the name of the philosopher, but it's through cranes and skyhooks. So he uses the metaphor. So you have skyhooks, which are like magical things that hang from the sky that happen to just like build one layer on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. And we all know that's impossible. That's just physically impossible. But with a crane, like, let's say a crane like creates a building, it starts from the ground floor and builds up over time and builds up over time. And when you have evolution going over a span of billions of years, it honestly almost seems like magic. Like how can like something can go from a single cell organism, and then like there's one mutation and adjustment, and one mutation and adjustment, and another, and eventually it's a multicellular, and then it kind of like gets the ability to absorb light, and it's just honestly, it's just so it's magic. It seems like magic, like the whole evolutionary process.
Why does the concept seem so linear when we don't live in a linear world?
Because I think it's just the nature of our reality and our dimension. Space-time is moving forward. So because space-time is moving forward, evolution is moving forward, therefore making linear. It's when you get into these higher dimensions that we can access as human beings, that things get more distributed, and things get, you can access things on a more horizontal level. It doesn't have to be a linear progression. You can kind of like take ideas back in time. You can think of things that are new, that will be new, that will develop forward in time. And you can, as human beings.
So you're a proponent of the fact that we evolved from monkeys.
Yeah.
So real quick, I mean, evolution doesn't need to be linear, right? Like you can be evolving. We made it to dinosaurs. They lasted like X amount of million years successfully, and then we kind of reset and started up again. And, if you gave us the time as the dinosaurs had, like we'd be on every corner of the galaxy already. But, we obviously haven't had that much time yet. So, I think evolution does kind of go back to checkpoints, start again. It doesn't have to be just this straight line.
It's kind of like circular, they're like, it's like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
So if we evolved from monkeys, then specifically, why are there still monkeys in existence at that primal state?
I think.
Oh, looks like he's looking for the stoned ape theory here, Dave, if you want to catch his ball.
The stoned ape theory. The most well-known McKenna theory. I kind of think evolution, it's like, it goes forward, but it's like circular, and like, we kind of like have common ancestors, but, people like, different species go different paths. And one of Terence McKenna's most notable theories is stoned ape theory, where he's like, what accounts for the massive expansion and the doubling of the human mental capacity. And what he puts forth is that, kind of our human ancestors wandering the African savannas would find psychedelic mushrooms in cow dung and would eat these mushrooms. And depending on how much they eat, they would either, improve their sight, which makes them better hunters, which increases their chances of survival. They would eat a little bit more. It would increase their sexual libido. So if they reproduce, then the genes will be passed down. And if they eat a little bit more, then they're not hunting, they're not reproducing, they're just tripping balls in the African savannah, and they're having these profound trips that expand the human mind. there are definitely scientists that disagree with that. The opponents would say like you can't have such like one thing like kind of oversimplify the evolutionary process. There has to be other factors. But the scientist Paul Stamets says like there's really no other theory. He presented at a conference in 2017, and he says there's no other theory that really counts for like what could have kickstarted the massive expansion in such a short period of time than mushrooms. So there definitely has to be more study and kind of like how mushrooms work in order to confirm that theory. And luckily, like that stuff is opening up with the Johns Hopkins Research Center and more things developing. Yeah, stoned ape theory. Look it up.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I think that he also kind of insinuates that during this time was when we really stopped, where we began rather evolving through culture and passing on more ways of doing things. Like previously, maybe your parents show you how to like pick the fruit or something, but then you end up getting organized, and the idea of eating this thing, it's not going to get forgotten.
Yeah.
Like in South America, they drink the ayahuasca, and you ask those people, and they're like, "Oh, like our ancestors taught us how to do this thousands of years ago," and you're like, "What?" And these two plants that they mix to make it, if you were to ingest either one of them separately, it would have absolutely no effect on you. And they're on like opposite sides of the Amazon. There's like 150,000 species in the Amazon. Like these people have, like, it's like, how on earth did these people figure this out? So
trial and error. Yeah, actually, to add on what you're saying, in Genesis, the story of the Garden of Adam and Eve and Eden, one of the theories of like what is the apple, and in when you look at the translation, it doesn't translate to apple, it translates to the color red. So one theory is like what Eve ate wasn't an apple, it was actually like the red mushroom that you see in Super Mario and stuff. And and it says the serpent in the Garden of Eden said you would become like gods. And so when you eat the red mushrooms, you kind of get this kind of like feeling of enhanced abilities and whatnot.
Back to the evolutionary concept, to be a little bit more realistic, and just your opinion, can people evolve? In essence, what I'm looking to say is, why is it that you have to evolve for better? Can't you devolve?
Human downgrading is totally a thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's pretty obvious. You just to evolve for survival. It doesn't matter if it's for better or worse. Like you evolve to pass on your genes in the next generation. If that means like getting dumber and dumber, evolution does not care. It's just evolution. A life just wants to move forward and pass on its genes from one generation to the next. So it can definitely devolve.
So evolution is tied to specifically the concept of wanting to maintain your genes going on this planet.
I think I see where you're going, man, and I completely agree that there's something missing here. Like it does seem like there's something that is pulling us in a direction, and it's really hard to fathom, really. But it's actually a huge part of. So this is all linking again. This keeps referencing our talk here, but Terence McKenna calls it the eschaton at the end of human history. And it does seem like there is an end goal, even if we don't see it, that we're getting pulled towards. And again, science really can't account for it. He used the term novelty instead of entropy for this exact reason. Like entropy is more random. It seems like we would be de-evolving and evolving at least like a 50-50 rate, even if it's like 60-40, it's not as quickly as it seems to be going now. So yeah, I think there's a piece of the puzzle missing for sure.
It also does feel like there's a little bit of the as above, so below. There are all of these layers of value of things that are evolving and working their way up. So cells have a specific genetic code. If they're successful, they create organs. If they're successful, they create animals. If they are successful, they create economies. If they're successful, like, and there's values that exist all the way through it. And the most successful values seem to be potentially sort of collectivism, which is potentially where we're going to be going.
Hi,
Yeah.
how are you guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Please.
What I think is that this ascension that we are doing is actually like us having or gaining the consciousness that we are something bigger, like one whole being that has like forgotten or has to go through this process to realizing what he is really, or coming back. I don't know how you how to explain it better than that.
Muy bien, Ariel, me gusta.
How are you, Flo?
Genial, muy bien, muy bien. I'm happy to see you. Long time no see.
Yes, I'm also very happy to see you.
I love reunions.
Have you guys been to Argentina?
Yeah, I actually just went a few months ago. Actually, wow, it's been almost a year. But yeah, checked out Buenos Aires. Yeah, Jesus.
You've been down there for too long. Just kidding.
I'm actually in Florianopolis right now.
Oh man, I love Florianopolis.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I visited him a few months ago, right before Corona hit. Literally, Carnival, right before everything just hit the fan. Yeah.
Someone else we have here, Vincent, is actually in Florianopolis right now as well. One of my friends.
Where do you live in Floripa?
I was living in Pantanal for most of my time, but I just recently moved to Centro.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. Dude, we had the dopest house in Lagoa. Oh my God, I miss that place. I actually went.
I gotta go. See you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great talk, John.
Thanks a lot.
Oh my God, it's a funny story. So like how he ended up in Brazil is like I originally studied abroad there, and then I told him about it, and then he studied abroad there, and then he
It's like a secret island.
It's a secret. Yeah, it's a secret.
It's a Magica Ilia Magica.
Yeah, exactly.
He loved it so much. Yeah, he loved it so much. He just, stayed down there.
It's the Brazilian women that kept him down there.
You can say that again.
This guy knows.
I mean, honestly, it's more than that. But just like the whole energy, like the energy you can't beat down there.
That's why he's an ascended master now.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about reincarnation?
About what?
Reincarnation.
Right.
I think
that's a good question.
I like to think that it exists, but I don't know. It sounds very comforting for it to exist. Like living it kind of sounds romanticized. Like in your past life you were this, and the life before that you were that. But
I think I got you.
Yeah.
So for my personal opinion only, not sure, maybe a certain percentage of this is backed by science, but just give me a break here, huh? So I would say consciousness is similar to more of like it's a consistent thing, and you can have maybe concentrations of it, but it would ultimately, the way I would view it is literally like a quantum field, if that means anything to anyone. Like each particle kind of has their own field. Like there's the electron field, and like wherever an electron is a concentration in that field. I've always thought consciousness seems like its own field, and there are concentrations of it. And so if you imagine them having their own like molecule almost, I would see it as like there's like a lake of consciousness, which is like the field itself, and then maybe the individuals are like a bucket full of the water, or the metaphorical water, and when your time's up, you kind of get thrown back into the lake. And then when another person's time's coming, you gotta grab the bucket, you pick them up. So like you may have like somebody else's, like atoms or molecules. It's like how atoms are recycled in on Earth. You may have like the atoms of, some 15th century, queen.
Yeah.
But like maybe it's just like a piece. I'm not sure there's really an identity that travels with it.
I saw a documentary, and it was super interesting because there was this child who literally he was literally a different person, and his family came from a normal Christian family. So for this kid to be saying like, yo, this is who I was, specifically, and like they did like an entire research on this kid, and this kid ended up going back to the location where he died in World War II, and you see this kid crying and like literally like overcome with this certain type of emotion.
He must have had a lot of those atoms that Dube was talking about.
I mean,
definitely
it's
exists in
theoretically,
nature.
Possible. If you did get, just the same bucket of water, I'm not sure how big the lake really is.
I agree. Like, I think another way to put this is, I remember reading about a testimony of like a near-death experience of like somebody got hit by a car, and when he passed on, he didn't see a light at the end of a tunnel. He kind of like was in this like wheel that existed in like a higher dimension, and the wheel was always spinning with like different like cups of water, and the water wasn't water, but it was really just kind of like different possibilities in each kind of like cup that was spinning, and the universe, or like the wheel didn't care like where you were placed. It just needed to place you somewhere in the order. And then he kind of just got like placed back into his reality. It was a very like eye-opening experience, like reading, and what you said, Jonathan, reminded me of that.
I've got a question for everybody.
Yeah.
Do you, in the same way you probably took mushrooms and ayahuasca, and in ancient cultures they had druidic rites of passage, and in the basically in cultures across the world you've got rites of passage. Do you think how do you view COVID-19, and do you think we're going through a kind of universal rite of passage, and if we are, what's on the other end of it, both good and bad?
I think the end of it is definitely a more distributed world. We're starting to see the effects of that. Like, all work is becoming remote. And I think one of the consequences of that, I was reading an article recently about how this one company, was hiring computer programs from developing countries, and were basically paying factory wages to these developers to do maintenance work on certain computer programs. So you're kind of seeing I think the effect of COVID-19 causing the massive shift to remote work is a leveling of the playing field for professions. And kind of like the buzzword and the buzz phrase of the past 2 years is, if you don't like where you are, learn to code. Learn to code. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily going to apply for this decade. If you can just learn, if like somebody from a developing country can like learn to code on YouTube and accept iTunes gift cards as payment. Why would you go to somebody you have to pay a lot more when you can just like get the same level of expertise for a lot cheaper?
I agree with you. There's two directions that I see. I see that after this situation, we could go back to what we've normally done, but life doesn't really work like that. Usually, after a situation like this, our entire fabric of society changes, and people tend to be more distancing of each other, less trusting of each other, more questions.
This is my worry.
Yeah, this is definitely
This is the start of the
Exactly.
Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, this is definitely a collective trauma experience. And, you know, when you look throughout history, like pandemics are, you know, kind of persistent. Like you see there are just plagues, you know, after the Roman Empire, there were plagues from like 450 to like 800. And before COVID-19, you could just cross that out like, oh, whatever. But now, like you can imagine during those dark times in Europe of like, you know, the Roman Empire falling and like all these diseases ravaging Europe, like, you know, it's definitely like people are definitely more like distant and, you know, kind of more like in a state of fear.
Well,
And
imagine the homeless guy
It
on the
depends.
street.
No, go. Flo.
The
yeah.
homeless guy on the street. Are you going to walk up to him and give him food like you would before?
They're getting even more from what I can see. In London now.
It's a real dynamic and a real reality. Are you going to be the guy who's going to walk up to that homeless guy and say, hey, here's some food when you know that he's hungry and suffering?
Yeah. I mean, like, I live in Santa Monica, and down the street from me is a 7-Eleven, and there's like a party of like 15 of homeless people outside the 7-Eleven, just, you know, chilling, waiting for people to give them money. And it's always been like that, but like now it's kind of like, it's like different because of just kind of like the social distancing.
This is, yeah, that's one thing that unites us. I think one thing is we are leveling the playing field, but we're all suffering in some kind of way. And I think I look at pictures on the TV of them separating children at schools now. And, you know, even myself, I'm separated from my mum and my dad. I can't go and see them. And it's just, I do hope we can come out the other side. I mean, I believe, man, I believe. But
yeah, no, we're definitely
think
going to
that
come out of it. Yeah, it's just the world's going to be different.
And now we have the
think that the real
technology
test-
to fall back on. Sorry, Ariel. You know, now that it's becoming so much easier to connect with, you know, Zoom and everything, I just think it's going to accelerate our reliance to put our relationships online and rely on the internet for what we would normally, you know, do in real life, so to say. And yeah, I mean, I see the VR world coming sooner and sooner than what you kind of your historical time put into that world will be more.
Actually, that brings me to my talk. I was meant to do. I'll make it quick. Okay, because I wrote out a speech. Okay, so has COVID, and you can stop me at any point and say, please be quiet. Has COVID-19 changed the world as we know it forever? Are we addicted to debt? And if so, can we get clean and sober? Will fiat currency appreciate in value in the coming years or depreciate? What is the solution to a world that is on its way to a potential bankruptcy? Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing the great monetary inflation, an unprecedented expansion of every form of money, unlike anything the developed world has ever seen. COVID-19 has changed the world forever, as we know, forever. It's a one-of-a-kind virus, and it has triggered a one-of-a-kind response. Since February, 3.9 trillion of global GDP has been printed out of thin air through quantitative easing. Experts are predicting that it would take levels. The government debt ratio is higher now than during World War II. We are, ladies and gentlemen, experiencing, as the hedge fund impresario Paul Tudor Jones has labeled it, the great monetary inflation. And it is an unprecedented monetary expansion, unlike anything experienced in history. And who's funding this debt increase? Debt increase. I turned into a Brazilian there. Debt increase. Central banks. In February, the Fed balance sheet grew by 60%, and predictions are that it will double by the year end. Balance sheets in other countries have already doubled, and in others they've tripled. We're in the midst of the worst employment crisis since the Great Depression. And central banks aren't lending out the stimulus money because they're fearful of defaults, and they're probably trying to save their own asses. So will this lead? Where will this lead? If you put high debt and money printing together, it becomes a particularly hard addiction to stop. And allied to this, COVID-19 has shown us how unbelievably fragile the economies of the world are to an act of God or global pandemic. Not only this, the coronavirus pandemic has also stoked tensions between nations, especially the United States and China. And relations between these two superpowers appear it feels like a throwback to the Cold War era. So the question is, where does a shrewd investor put his money now? Banks, property, precious metals. Many are looking at he's nearly got it. Many are looking at traditional crisis safe havens like gold, silver, precious metals. Others are looking for new safe havens like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So Paul Tudor Jones, I know I keep referencing this guy, but he's got a list of places that you could put your money. And number one on the list is gold. There's been a 2,500-year-old store of value. He talks about bonds, the NASDAQ 100, and then he goes on to Bitcoin, US cyclicals, global Goldman Sachs commodity index. Anyway, so I'm going to Bitcoin. And why Bitcoin? Bitcoin is classed as an emerging asset class, but it has had positive returns over recent timeframes. I got into it super late, 2017, but it bit me and it's had me ever since. It can be a store of value. So if you imagine if you'd invested in Bitcoin in 2012 at 1 cent, you'd have made a 1,000,000% return. It can be used as real money too. It's a currency that requires no government, border agency, or central authority to verify it. It's the best performing asset there has ever been. It's a phenomenon designed by Satoshi Nakamoto in the wake of the Lehman Brothers collapse and subsequent banking bailout. It's a currency designed by the people for the people. It's a store of value like digital gold and has a finite amount of coins minted, 21 million, and a deflationary halving every 4 years. It's an electronic currency that needs no central bank, government, nor financial oversight to work. It is the only large tradable asset in the world that has a known fixed supply. 18.5 million Bitcoin have already been mined of a 21 million fixed supply. And as I mentioned, on May the 12th, Bitcoin's third halving took place. That happens every 4 years, where the speed at which Bitcoin are created increased. But wait, are reduced from 12.5 to 6.25 Bitcoins per block of transactions added to the blockchain. I'm nearly there, guys. Future halvings will continue to slow the rate of supply increase, meaning the last Bitcoin to be mined is still 100 years away. This is an anti-inflationary measure alien to central banks and is the genius of its design. Bitcoin is a hugely liquid asset and is tradable 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's portable, meaning it can be carried on a computer, ledger, or smartphone. It has 1/60th the market cap of gold, and only 60 million people use it or own any of it. And with Facebook's Libra and the digitization of international currencies, most notably the Chinese digital yuan, virtual wallets will become commonplace. In the future, I see a world where the ease of ownership of Bitcoin becoming even easier than it is today. So the most compelling argument for Bitcoin is the coming digitization of currency everywhere on the planet, catalyzed by COVID-19. So to finish, many are asking what the winner will be within 10 years, in 10 years' time. I say it will be Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is digital gold and must be viewed as the right hedge to make against the great monetary inflation. The end.
That's awesome, man. At times it was like I just wanted to have like some music at the back.
Yo, I dropped my Bitcoin anthem in the link in the chat box. And
I wish I'd done one on mushrooms now, though. It sounded much more fun.
Yeah, if anybody wants to connect after this, I should put my like Twitter and LinkedIn in the chat, and I'll put it in the unit group as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh man. Hold on, let me get
I
it.
must get you on some of you guys on to my podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I'm down.
Totally.
Yeah, I'd love that, man.
Yeah. So how do I get all of your details? Is it on the?
I'll
Yeah,
put it
yeah.
up chat here.
I just dropped mine.
Great.
Oh,
Yeah.
you can Facebook, Twitter,
I'll-
Instagram.
You can message me on Telegram
get you
too.
on.
Yeah, I'm on everything too.
Yeah.
I don't get that many views, but I've got maybe you get 100 or 200 on YouTube or
Well,
something.
Hey, that's a pretty big group of people. 100.
I've got a few thousand on Twitter.
There, I follow David.
Nice.
well,
It depends on who are your followers, right? Remember, like it's the who are your followers and not how many now. It's different quantifiable
Yeah, it's
factor.
the quality.
You guys
you
are
know.
really
It's
interesting.
the quality.
actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, everyone. I'm gonna have to run out. Thank you. This was really
Thank you.
fascinating. Beautiful to
Thank you.
connect with everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Nice meeting you guys.
Awesome.
Wow, this was beautiful. Truly.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find the others.
Find the as
That
Terrence
was
referenced.
the best chat
Timothy
room.
Leary, find the others.
So Uncle Bob, are you still there? Yeah. That was very awesome.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to give my my Telegram. Please contact me if you want to come on, and I'll get you on this weekend. I've got some interesting people next week, actually. It's so easy to make contact with interesting people in this.
In the space, it's like instant. It's at the speed of light.
And everyone's really approachable. And most people, if you say, come on my podcast, it doesn't matter who they are, they'll say yes. I've spoken to people well beyond like my, my.
I can
country.
talk about Argentina. Uncle
Why
Bob.
not?
And Bitcoin, of course. Yeah.
yeah, Ariel, he knows a lot about Bitcoin.
Yeah. I'm an evangelist.
But you definitely got.
He's a maximalist.
Honestly, I think when it comes to Bitcoin, like I feel like the way to describe like how I feel, it's like religious how I feel about it. To be honest, like, I mean, I love like I think there's definitely possibilities with altcoins. I'm not a maximalist by any means, but there's just something about like the gravity of Bitcoin that's so heavy and like that lifts everything up. So like Bitcoin is like truly so revolutionary. It's like the internet, internet of money.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for Bitcoin. I'm not gonna pretend Bitcoin specifically, it has influenced and impact my life in ways that I just wish if I had listened to myself earlier, because I was telling people to buy Bitcoin in 2012.
I mean, there's so many people like that. I first heard of it in 2010, 2011, but it's just like so hard to grasp it. It literally takes years of it being repeated and being repeated. And for me personally, I was kind of just thrown in a situation where it was like forced to be in crypto, and I was just kind of like, got like a very like, this like indoctrination and education just because I was.
What forced you into crypto?
Okay, so I work at Everpedia, which is a blockchain-based encyclopedia, and before we were just like an alternative to Wikipedia. We would have pages that Wikipedia wouldn't have. But then we made a pivot towards blockchain, we raised money, Galaxy Digital. We had an airdrop on EOS, and we've been live as a blockchain encyclopedia on EOS in 2018. So starting in 2017, because I worked at Everpedia, I was originally a writer, just writing the encyclopedia entries. I was just like
me?
into
Wow.
this crypto world. Yeah.
That's so amazing.
I would love to talk about it on your podcast.
Man,
I just messaged you.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I love if anybody has a podcast, like I would love to be on it. They just put me in charge of public relations, so it's my job to get the word out there.
Definite. I'm starting a platform. It's called WorldStar Bitcoin.
Love it.
And yeah, that was actually what my talk was about, was basically marketing and promoting Bitcoin to the masses. And the whole thing is, I'm about to like quote Ariel, because I want to know, Ariel, what's your opinion on EOS?
I mean, I'm such a big maximalist that I don't even
Think about other comments. No, that's fine. Like honestly, like if you want to like be a maximalist, like it's definitely like isn't the most, it isn't the wrong path. It just it depends on your preferences.
because I'm just right now I'm just interested in like the world changing its monetary system.
Yeah, I think that my
like
opinion different. Yeah.
An Ethereum or a world computer is a dream like for another class of people. I'm more into the economic aspect of everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like I think like different blockchains have different, focuses and functions. Like Bitcoin, like you said, is a monetary system and revolutionizing that. Ethereum could be like more DeFi. EOS is like more, like have, highest transaction throughput. So it's more for consumer dApps and like EOS.io technology. There's this one blockchain that runs on EOS.io technology called Wax. They just want, they have Wax.io. I know those guys over there, and they have a partner. They just partnership with Tops. They launched their Garbage Pail Kids cards 2 days ago, and in 28 hours they sold out of Garbage Pail Kids packs. And now you have cards and packs reselling for hundreds of dollars on the Wax blockchain.
You're kidding me.
I'm dead serious. Look it up.
I heard it.
Biggest thing to happen to NFTs since CryptoKitties, in my opinion.
And they're a legit company. They've been going for a while.
Yeah, so they had their like ICO. They had their ICO like during like the whole ICO boom. They've been like building their product. For the past few years, and they scored the partnerships with Tops, and now they can release like Tops IP as these NFTs. So first it was Garbage Pail Kids, and in the future you're gonna have baseball cards. And,
what project outside of the Bitcoin, and what project excites you the most?
What project excites me the most? Us, like, well, I love what we're doing at Everpedia. I don't mean to like to show myself, but like we're so much more than an encyclopedia now. Like, so we run on the IQ token, and like, the IQ token.
Is that the sales bit, the one-liner? What did you say
I'll
there?
tell you, this is the one-liner. This is the one-liner.
So much more than Wikipedia.
No, I mean it's
so much more than that.
This is the one-liner that if you want. The IQ token is a foundation of knowledge economy that's going to power family decentralized applications. So we're not only an encyclopedia where you can like earn tokens use the token to govern the platform, vote on people's edits. We also have a prediction market built on EOS called Predict. And so you can use IQ token you can't do this on any other prediction market, not on Augur, not on Gnosis, not on anything else. You can actually create your own markets, and you can earn fees from the markets. And so let's say.
So wait a minute, you actually were writing the descriptions. What was your job again at this? At
okay, so at Everpedia, first I started off as just like a volunteer contributor. This was before crypto was even a thought. I was just like, I literally just graduated from college, and like I found it. I connected with people, and I found it. And I've just always been a writer, so I was just like writing encyclopedia pages about like current events in the news. And then like I was living in New Jersey at the time, and then like I was doing a good enough job that they were like, "Hey, you want to do this in LA?" I'm like, "Sure." So I bought like a one-way ticket to LA in 2016, and I lived in this apartment in a bunk bed with like 7 other dudes for 2 years. And then like so I moved there in 2016, 2017, we started to like pivot towards crypto. Our founder, his name's Sam Kazemian, he's brilliant. He mined crypto in college, so he already had that learning curve. And we eventually decided to like build upon EOS, and one thing led to another. We ended up raising money from Galaxy Digital and building the blockchain encyclopedia upon EOS. And now my position, I went from like volunteer contributor, and now I'm the vice president of business development. And a lot has happened in between.
Because you have a real talent for taking a really difficult concept or difficult idea or difficult bunch of whatever, and just making it really easy to understand, which I suppose would be you're good at interpreting information.
Dude, thank you so much. Especially since I just met you just now, and you're saying this, it means the world to me. Like somebody I just met is like saying this about like my communication skills.
You got great I mean, just the first thing and you got a way of making it really easy to understand, so it makes people feel at ease when they're.
Yeah, that's just my whole goal. Like even before Everpedia, I've been like writing blogs on and off on the internet for like 10 years. Even when I was in high school and college, I had this one blog. I'm gonna start publishing my old writings on the Hive blockchain. And like I had this one blog. It was called Frequency of the Unknown, and like I would just go about like saying my philosophies and experiences and whatnot.
Wow, I bet they're like gold. You're gonna have to tell me more about all this.
We'll do it on your podcast. We'll do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. 100%.
Yeah. So, I'm not shilling, but I have a question. What's your guys' opinion on DigiByte?
I don't know. I know it's I like how like, it's kind of like very scrappy. It's like its own blockchain. It's been around for a while. I don't know too much about it. I don't know like what its like wider adoption plan is. It seems like to come from like the epoch after the first halvening, when you kind of had like an explosion of like the first explosion of altcoins, before Ethereum. That seems like where DigiByte is. It definitely has like the community behind it, but like I don't know its adoption plans and stuff.
Yeah, and what's your perspective overall on proof of work versus proof of stake?
I think each one has its like positives and negatives. I think like the positives of proof of work, that it uses energy to secure the network. In proof of stake, it's more environmentally friendly. It's just like they're both different ways of achieving Byzantine consensus. I don't necessarily have a preference.
How about you, Ariel?
I just like Bitcoin.
Just like Bitcoin.
Yeah. Because I believe it's like a true blockchain if it has this model of incentivizing, like putting a carrot in front of the miners to do the work, and that makes it it is centralized by itself, just by the.
What I love about the Bitcoin white paper is just how simple and short and to the point it is. It's like the U.S. Constitution. Like the U.S. Constitution is one of the shortest constitutions in the world. It just gives like
the best ideas are the shortest.
Yeah, they're the short. It's the ones that you can explain. Like sure, like okay, it's this, this, and this, and like and then people like they build on top of that.
Totally.
It's interesting. Oh no, stairs. The stairs. So it's interesting. Bitcoin, I have the ultimate love for Bitcoin. Like it's just like for me, it's the coolest, it's the dopest. I have mad appreciation. It's the number one. It's the first one. I'm super open-minded with all the other cryptocurrencies because specifically I see that there's just so many intelligent minds working in this space. So I like to look at what everyone is doing, and I think EOS has some cool things going on. The thing I like specifically is I like Monero because of
Very quickly, guys, I've got to go because do you know what? I'm doing a podcast with the CEO of Pirate Chain, which is like a piracy, privacy currency.
Isn't that
It's the one that, it's measured in R's.
Killing that one?
Yeah, his name's Darek or something. Darek. He's the CEO of Pirate Chain. I've got to interview him. Guys, take care.
Thank you.
You too.
Great talking, man.
Get in contact. Anybody who wants to come on the podcast. Honestly, I'm up for any of you coming on. Be great.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
yo, if you need any marketing or promotion, I got you all on marketing and promotion. That's what.
Man, get in contact with me.
All right, Flo.
100%. Exactly what I need. See ya.
I wanna. Chelsea. Flo, I want to advertise like some Bitcoin courses, and I run to Google doesn't like or doesn't allow you to do Bitcoin advertisements.
Well, you know what's funny? We actually did an ad for someone specifically that was Bitcoin related. Like all of that stuff, that's the easy stuff for us. It's just about having quality content, and that's what we want to get behind, quality content. So if you have courses, we can definitely help you with that. I don't even have your contact.
Yeah, okay. What do you want to talk to me on Instagram or Twitter?
Just put it in the chat.
Or
yeah, you do you have me
on what?
Do you have my Instagram?
I think so. Let's check.
Yeah, shoot me a message on Instagram, and we can work something out. Because is your courses in English or Spanish?
Yeah, right now only Spanish.
Okay.
I organized one with a friend that has a YouTube channel with 50,000 subscribers. We got he also has a website with members that they pay, and we did a mailing, and we got 60 people to join the course.
Wow.
Right now it's only Spanish, but if I know how to speak also in English, so I could do in some other language. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be perfect, because I was actually talking with one of my partners, and he works in the marketing department of Facebook, and we were talking about.
I think we have to get back to the room and not distort the meeting, right?
And he was actually talking about just the value of the course industry and how you can reach so many people with the courses, and how he actually he travels the world teaching people on how to do marketing as well. And he put together a course, and he made like $12K on his course. But it's like one of those private courses that you only take like 10 people and you charge $3K a pop for. So whatever you're doing, we're in full support if you.
Okay. Let's go. So we can go back to the conversation that we were having about the realms of reality, or I really love that. It was amazing.
That was some conversation. Like, we're literally 20 minutes over when the conference was supposed to end. I love it. And I love how just everybody just came and participated, and everybody just added so much to the conversation. It was really beautiful. Yeah. Anyways, I have to go, guys. I have a meeting a friend in a bit, but it was great talking to everyone. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Nice meeting everyone. Connect with me. I'll put it in the group too. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.